Elias could suddenly hear other people's thoughts. Across the dinner table, his wife Eleanor, who had always been cold to him, was cutting her steak with her head bowed. Yet, he clearly caught her inner cry. What should I do? Does Elias not love me anymore? I don't want a divorce, absolutely not. Boo-hoo. The hand gripping his knife and fork suddenly froze. Before he could recover from the shock, the lights in front of him flickered violently. When he opened his eyes again, the familiar apartment was gone. In its place was an ivy-covered teaching building. In his hand, he was clutching a pink love letter with a gilded edge, and 19-year-old Eleanor stood before him, her fair face full of arrogance. If it's a confession, don't bother. Her voice was sweet, but wrapped in a coldness that pushed people away. However, a completely different cheer exploded in Elias's mind. Huh. He looks so cute, nervously crumpling the love letter. I just love seeing him look disappointed yet unwilling to give up. 9 years of memories from his past life instantly surged back. 4 years of persistent pursuit in college and 5 years of cold treatment in their marriage. Eleanor's indifference stung his heart like a needle. Now, hearing these completely different thoughts, Elias felt nothing but absurdity and anger. He fiercely tore the love letter into pieces and threw them into the trash can behind him. Sorry, I was just passing by to throw away trash. You're in my way. The coldness on Eleanor's face instantly froze. Elias clearly heard her gasp in her mind. He actually tore up the love letter for me? What if he never comes to me again? Should I say something soft to keep him? He didn't linger and turned to walk away, letting her intense gaze follow his back. Half an hour later, Elias was sitting in the university cafeteria, looking at the phone screen his roommate Justin handed him, and couldn't help but let out a laugh. On the campus confession board, Eleanor was squatting by a trash can, rummaging for something without a care for her image. Her fair fingers were stained black with grime, but she didn't seem to mind. In the comments section, everyone was guessing what treasure could make the aloof campus beauty lose her composure like this. Only Elias knew she was looking for the torn pieces of the love letter. This must be very important to Eleanor, right? Justin poked the screen. She comes from a good family and is beautiful. Whatever she's so focused on must be extraordinary. Elias picked up his cola. The cool liquid slid down his throat, but it couldn't suppress the bitterness in his heart. No matter how important it is, once it's thrown away, it's just trash. It's not trash. A clear female voice suddenly rang out, and a warm hand abruptly grabbed his wrist. Elias looked up and met Eleanor's reddened almond-shaped eyes. In her hand, she was clutching a love letter carefully pieced together with transparent tape, the creases on the torn edges smoothed out. See, I put it back together. Her voice carried an almost imperceptible tremor, as if she were waiting for something. Elias's heart tightened. In his past life, she would never show such a vulnerable side, even when he begged her. But the 9 years of coldness flooded back into his mind the next second. He curled his lips. You treasure something I wrote for a stray dog? Eleanor's face instantly turned pale, and tears welled up in her eyes, but she stubbornly held them back. A few seconds later, a soft woof came out of her mouth. Elias was completely stunned, and even Justin was so shocked he almost knocked over his tray. Holy crap. Eleanor, you. Back in the dorm, Justin hugged his pillow and pestered him about his relationship with Eleanor, but Elias just leaned back in his chair, staring blankly at the sycamore trees outside the window. In his past life, he thought Eleanor's coldness was her nature. It was only after hearing her thoughts that he realized he might have missed something. But the 9 years of hurt were real, and he simply didn't have the energy to try and figure out her thoughts again. Stop thinking about it. Justin suddenly pulled out 2 bar coupons and slapped them on the desk. Let's go and relax this Saturday night. A few drinks will make all your troubles disappear. Elias looked at the buy one get one free on the coupons and, on a whim, nodded. Saturday night. The bar was filled with hazy lights, and the loud music was deafening. Elias had just finished half a glass of whiskey when a girl in a white dress sat down beside him, her voice sickeningly sweet. Handsome, did you just break up? Someone as handsome as you deserves better. Justin was frantically winking at him from the side. Elias was about to refuse when he caught sight of a familiar figure at the entrance. Eleanor, wearing a black slip dress, her long hair draped over her shoulders, her face so sullen it looked like it could drip water. His heart sank. and the alcohol buzz instantly sobered him up. The girl didn't seem to notice the danger and tried to move closer to Elias. But Eleanor had already walked over quickly, and with just one cold glare, she made the girl grab her bag and leave in a hurry. What? Are you reluctant to see her go? Eleanor smiled at him, but there was no warmth in her smile. Do you want me to help you get her back? Elias instinctively shook his head. Before he could say anything, Eleanor grabbed his ear and twisted it hard. Ow! Let go. He struggled, but she dragged him toward the exit. Seeing this, Justin immediately clutched his stomach and feigned dizziness. Oh, I'm so drunk. My sister is looking for me. I'll be leaving now. With that, he ran off without looking back. Outside the bar, Eleanor shoved Elias into the passenger seat and fastened his seat belt. The moment the engine started, Elias suddenly heard her inner thoughts. He used to get drunk after one drink, and now he can drink so much. And he dares to talk to other girls. He's getting bolder and bolder. He turned his head sharply to look at Eleanor. Her fingers gripping the steering wheel were white, and the outline of her profile looked exceptionally soft under the streetlights. Did you also come back? Elias's voice trembled. In his past life, Eleanor would never care about his whereabouts, let alone get angry over other girls. Eleanor's body stiffened for a moment, and she didn't say anything, just pressed a little harder on the gas pedal. The car finally stopped in front of an off-campus apartment building. She pulled Elias into the elevator, and the warmth of her fingers came through his clothes, making his heart skip a beat. Inside the apartment, Eleanor pushed him against the wall by the entrance. Moonlight streamed in from the floor-to-ceiling window, illuminating her face and the look of grievance in her eyes. You really don't like me anymore? Her voice was very soft, but with a hint of pleading. You used to love me so much. Why did you change so suddenly? Elias looked at her reddened eyes, and his heart felt heavy. The coldness of his past life and her current vulnerability intertwined in his mind. He couldn't tell which was the real Eleanor. I just don't understand you, he sighed. What do you really want? Eleanor suddenly let go of him, turned, and walked to a corner of the living room. She stepped on a stool to retrieve a thick photo album from the highest shelf. Dust fell on her hair, but she didn't care. She just gently patted the cover of the album and slowly opened it. This is my mom. In the photos, the woman held a young Eleanor, smiling gently. But as the pages turned, the woman's smile gradually disappeared, and her eyes became empty. My dad used to love my mom very much, but he always made her cry. Eleanor's voice choked. Mom said that loving someone brings both tears of joy and tears of sorrow. But in the end, her tears couldn't keep Dad. Elias looked at the family photos with the husband's figure cut out and the burned edges, and he suddenly understood something. Eleanor's coldness in his past life was perhaps never about not loving him, but about being afraid of repeating her mother's tragedy. She was afraid of being abandoned after giving her heart, so she armed herself with coldness to see if he would leave as easily as her father did. I just wanted you to love me a little more. Eleanor closed the photo album, and the tears finally fell. I wanted you to choose me as firmly as I chose you. Under the moonlight, her shoulders trembled slightly, like a lost child. Elias reached out and gently wiped away her tears. The iceberg in his heart finally began to melt. Some people spend their whole lives healing from childhood wounds. Eleanor's fingertips gently traced the edge of the photo album, her voice as light as a feather. I'm used to shouldering everything alone, but I also hoped someone would see through my facade. So I pushed you away again and again, yet couldn't help but pull you back. In that push and pull, I was looking for a little bit of security in being firmly chosen. She looked up at Elias, her eyes sparkling with tiny lights. You always said you fell in love with me the first time you saw me during freshman orientation. But you didn't know that in that same moment, I also fell for you. As soon as she finished speaking, the side of the bookshelf slowly slid open, revealing a wall-sized display of butterflies. Elias walked closer and realized that the butterflies were all made of photos, and every single one of them had him in it, from a fresh-faced freshman to a newcomer in the workplace. The timeline was astonishingly clear. This was taken the first time we met. Eleanor pointed to the photo at the very top, a gentle curve on her lips. In the photo, Elias was walking unsteadily in the orientation line, lugging 3 large bags and 2 huge suitcases, his forehead covered in sweat. I thought you were moving in, she said with a laugh. Elias scratched his head awkwardly. Actually, only one of the suitcases was mine. The rest belonged to my roommate, Justin. He was in a hurry to go to the bathroom and forced me to help him. He paused, suddenly remembering something, and gasped. Wait a minute. At that time, I think I felt the suitcase will get stuck on something, and I pushed hard. Did I run over your foot? Eleanor nodded, holding back a laugh, and pointed to a photo next to it. Look, this was taken later. In the photo, Elias was holding 3 ice cream cones, taking a big bite, with cream on the corner of his mouth. I originally thought you were buying them for your friends, and I followed you all the way, only to find that you ate them all by yourself. A hint of admiration flashed in her eyes. At that time, I thought you had a great appetite and lived so freely. Elias covered his face, wishing he could find a hole to crawl into. Don't look anymore. You're going to make me die of embarrassment. He suddenly remembered something and said glumly, and I was the one who confessed first. So why do you say you fell for me at first sight? Eleanor was taken aback for a moment, then took out her phone and opened her moments, scrolling to a post from 3 years ago, a photo of a clear blue sky with just 4 words as the caption, the same sky. I posted this the day before you gave me the love letter. She looked at Elias expectantly. I took it at the research park around the time your class ended. I thought you'd understand that we were looking at the same sky, and that was my confession. Elias was completely stunned, and after a long while, he said with a wry smile, how could anyone guess that kind of hint? He then remembered their married life, and his tone softened. And when we were decorating the apartment and planning the wedding, I thought you didn't care about anything and just let me decide. It was only later that I found out you secretly hired professionals to design the layouts that fit my taste. Why didn't you ever say anything? Eleanor's shoulders drooped slightly, her voice tinged with a hint of grievance. I was afraid that the more you knew about me, the more disappointed you'd be. My mom was abandoned by my dad because she exposed all her flaws. I didn't want to become like her. I didn't want you to leave me either. Silly, that's not your fault. Elias reached out and cupped her face, his fingertips gently wiping away the tears from the corners of her eyes. True love is loving all of a person, loving your brilliance and loving your vulnerability. Liking just the surface isn't love at all. He paused, his voice full of remorse. I'm sorry, I understood too late and made you wait for so long. Eleanor smiled, but her eyes were glistening with tears. She walked to the butterfly wall and ran her fingers over the threads connecting the photos. Actually, the night before you took out the divorce papers, I made a wish on a shooting star. I saw that you weren't happy these past few years, and I knew it was because I hid my love too deeply. So I wished that if I could go back, I would give you a second chance to choose, even if you would eventually leave me. She turned to face Elias, her eyes full of trepidation. Now that I've told you all my secrets, can you still love me, an imperfect me? Elias was silent. His love was real, but so were the grievances and pain from those years. He took a deep breath and said softly, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer yet. Instead of disappointment, Eleanor's face broke into a relieved smile. That's okay, we can take our time. From then on, Eleanor really changed. She no longer hid behind a cold facade. She would actively share her daily life with Elias and even learn to express her vulnerability. When she fell on the sports field, she would tell her friends, I'm fine, 1 second, and the next, seeing Elias approaching, she would pout and rush into his arms, saying in a tearful voice, Baby fell, and it hurts. I need a hug. She also started trying things she had previously refused, like bubble tea. The first time Elias asked her out, he queued for half an hour to buy 2 taro bubble teas. Eleanor had frowned and said, just get one next time, which had disappointed him for a long time. It was only now that she explained, I had a cavity when I was a kid and it hurt so much I couldn't sleep all night. My parents were already divorced and the nanny wasn't home, so I ended up calling the emergency number myself. Ever since then, I've been terrified of sweets. After that day, Eleanor took the initiative to buy 2 bubble teas and handed one to him. I tasted it, and it's not as scary as I thought. It's actually quite sweet. She was awkwardly learning to express her feelings, like a child who had just learned to walk, slowly figuring out how to love. For the remaining 3 years of college, they didn't rush to define their relationship, but simply acted like friends. They went to the library together every day, took walks on the sports field in the evenings, watched the sunset turn the sky orange, and talked about their future plans and past regrets. Elias watched Eleanor slowly let down her guard, the light in her eyes growing brighter, and the iceberg in his heart gradually melted. On graduation day, Eleanor suddenly walked onto the stage, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Under the gaze of the entire faculty and student body, she looked at Elias in the audience. The language of sunflowers is loyalty, a silent love. Her voice trembled slightly through the microphone, but it was incredibly firm. Elias, 3 years ago I confessed in the wrong way. 3 years later, I want to ask again, can you still love me? Elias stood up, walked through the cheering crowd, and went onto the stage. He took the sunflowers from her hand and said with a smile, I do. As soon as he said that, the clouds suddenly parted, and sunlight shone on them, giving the sunflowers a golden edge. The applause and cheers from the audience rose and fell. Eleanor looked into Elias's eyes and finally showed a relieved smile. The years of misunderstanding and waiting, the love hidden beneath the coldness, finally had the best ending at this moment. Their future began anew from this moment, without pretense or tests, only with honest love and steadfast companionship. A year after graduation, Elias opened a small cafe near the sports field they used to frequent. The floor-to-ceiling windows were lined with sunflowers. Every time Eleanor came, she would sit by the window and order a latte with extra foam, a flavor she had slowly come to love. She no longer resisted the sweetness, instead finding that the warm foam could warm her heart. One evening, as the cafe was about to close, a girl in a school uniform timidly walked in, clutching a neatly folded love letter in her hand and looking around nervously. Eleanor was wiping cups behind the counter. Seeing the girl's expression, she suddenly stopped, a familiar softness flashing in her eyes. Hi, can I help you with anything? Elias walked over and asked softly. The girl bit her lip and whispered, I want to write a love letter to the person I like, but I don't know how to write it well. I'm afraid he won't understand, and I'm afraid he'll reject me. Eleanor put down the cup, walked to the girl's side, and picked up a sticky note, smiling. You don't have to write anything fancy. Just say what's truly in your heart, like how you felt when you first met him, or the little details you secretly noticed. The feelings hidden in the details are more moving than flowery words. The girl's eyes lit up, but she still hesitated. But what if he doesn't understand my hint, like your husband back then? Eleanor was taken aback for a moment, then looked at Elias, and they smiled at each other. She patted the girl's head. If he doesn't understand, then tell him again. True love isn't afraid of waiting a little longer or saying it one more time. The girl nodded, half understanding, and bent over the table to write her letter. Eleanor returned to the counter. Elias came up behind her and gently hugged her, resting his chin on her head. Does this remind you of our college days? Yeah. Eleanor leaned into his arms, her voice soft. Back then, I always thought it was safer to hide my feelings, but I forgot that the most precious feelings need to be spoken to be seen. She paused, picking up a photo from the counter. It was taken after their graduation ceremony. Both of them were holding sunflowers, smiling radiantly. Luckily, we got a chance to start over. Just then, the girl finished her letter and skipped out, turning back to say, Thank you. I'll be brave and tell him. As she watched the girls retreating back, Eleanor suddenly remembered something. She took out a delicate box from a drawer and handed it to Elias. What is this? Elias opened the box. Inside was a handcrafted silver ring with the small letters E and E engraved on the inside, the first letters of their names. I took a silversmithing class for 3 months, Eleanor said, a little shyly. You were always the one doing things for me, so I wanted to give you a surprise this time. Elias took her hand, put the ring on her ring finger, and then took an identical ring from his pocket and put it on his own hand. Actually, I already knew, he said with a smile. Justin told me you were secretly going to the silversmithing shop every week, and you wouldn't tell anyone you burned your finger. Eleanor's face instantly turned red, and she playfully hit him. How do you know everything? Elias caught her hand and kissed it gently. Because I'm learning how to read you. Not with mind reading, but by listening to every word you say and watching everything you do with all my heart. That night, they closed the cafe and took a walk on the sports field just like they did in college. The evening breeze rustled Eleanor's long hair. She held onto Elias's arm and said softly, I used to be so afraid that I wasn't good enough and that you would leave me. But now I understand that love isn't about feigning perfection. It's about being willing to walk a path together even when you know each other's imperfections. Elias stopped, turned, and hugged her, looking into her eyes. To me, you don't need to be perfect. You cry when you get hurt. You're happy when you eat sweets. You get hurt when you're learning silversmithing. These real sides of you are what I love the most. The moonlight shone on them, and the distant streetlights glowed with a warm yellow light. Eleanor leaned into Elias's arms, listening to his heartbeat, and suddenly felt that the years of waiting and testing had not been in vain. She no longer needed to arm herself with coldness, nor did she need mind-reading to confirm their love, because she knew that the man in front of her would hold her hand and walk with her into a more distant future. Later, a message wall was added to the cafe, covered with confession notes written by customers. Whenever someone asked about the wall's origin, Eleanor would smile and say, because some feelings need to be seen and heard to blossom into the most beautiful flowers. And Elias would always add, just like sunflowers, as long as they face the sun, they will never lose their way. The third winter after the cafe opened, the city saw its first snow. The goose-down flakes fell, quickly blanketing the sunflower field outside the window. Eleanor leaned against the glass, drawing circles with her finger. Suddenly remembering something, she turned to Elias and said, Shall we go see my mom? Elias was taken aback. Ever since Eleanor mentioned her childhood, she rarely spoke of her mother. He put down his ledger, walked over, and took her hand. Okay, let's go now. Before they left, Eleanor made a point of buying a bouquet of white lisianthus from a nearby flower shop. Her eyes softened like melting snow as her fingertips gently brushed the petals. Mom used to love these the most. She said they were pure and gentle. Eleanor's mother lived in a nursing home on the city's outskirts. When they arrived, the elderly woman was sitting by the window knitting a sweater, the sunlight adding a touch of warmth to her gray hair. Seeing Eleanor, the knitting needles in her hand paused, and a complex emotion flashed in her eyes, surprise mixed with a subtle hint of guilt. Mom, this is Elias, my. Eleanor was about to introduce him, but her mother spoke first, her voice a little hoarse. I know. You're always posting his pictures on your moments. She pointed to a photo album on her bedside table, where several photos Eleanor had sent her were tucked inside. A picture of them at their graduation ceremony, a scene from the cafe's opening day, and a birthday cake Elias had made for Eleanor. Elias placed the fruit basket he brought on the table and said with a smile, Auntie, we'll visit you more often from now on. The old woman nodded, her gaze lingering on Eleanor. She hesitated for a long time before finally saying, That year you cried because of your toothache. I actually knew. Eleanor's body stiffened, and she almost dropped the lisianthus in her hand. Her mother sighed and continued, I had just separated from your dad back then and was hiding in my room drinking all day. I heard you cry, but I didn't have the courage to go out. Later, when I saw you call the emergency number yourself, I realized how much of a failure I was as a mother. I thought giving you money was enough. I thought letting you live in a big house was being good to you, but I forgot that what you needed most was for someone to be there for you. The old woman's voice choked up. Later, when you grew up, you always smiled so happily whenever you came to see me. I thought you had long forgotten, but I knew that the hurt in your heart had never healed. Eleanor's tears finally fell. She gripped her mother's hand, her voice trembling. Mom, I don't blame you. I was just afraid that I would be like you and not know how to love others. Her mother patted the back of her hand, her eyes also reddening. Silly child, love isn't something you're born with. You have to learn it. And aren't you doing a wonderful job now? That afternoon, the mother and daughter talked for a long time, from Eleanor's childhood to her current life, and from her mother's regrets in her youth to her hopes for the future. By the time they left the nursing home, the snow had stopped. The setting sun shone through the clouds, casting a golden edge on the snow. Eleanor held Elias's hand, her steps much lighter. I always felt like there was a layer of ice between my mom and me. Now, it has finally melted. We'll come every month from now on, Elias said, helping her wrap her scarf more tightly. Eleanor nodded, then suddenly remembered something. She took a small box from her bag. Oh, I have something to show you. Inside the box was a small, silver sunflower pendant with intricate patterns carved on the petals. It's a new skill I learned from my silversmithing teacher. I was going to give it to you for your birthday, but I couldn't wait. Elias took the pendant, his fingertips tracing the cool silver surface. He suddenly pulled her into his arms. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for being willing to open your heart. Thank you for being willing to learn to love, and thank you for teaching me how to love someone. In the blink of an eye, it was spring of the following year. The sunflower field at the cafe bloomed again, a brilliant golden spectacle that attracted many customers to take photos. One afternoon, the same girl who had come to write a love letter walked in with a boy. She was holding a bouquet of sunflowers and said to Eleanor with a smile, "I did it, big sister." He said he had already noticed me. Eleanor looked at the light in the girl's eyes and remembered her younger self. She couldn't help but smile. "Congratulations to you both." The girl held the boy's hand and chattered about their story. The boy had actually seen the letter she had secretly placed in his drawer, but deliberately waited for her to say it herself because he wanted to hear her truest feelings. After the girl left, Elias hugged Eleanor from behind, resting his chin on her head. "You see, as long as you speak your mind, you'll get a response." Eleanor leaned into his arms, looked at the sunflowers outside the window, and whispered, "I used to be so afraid of being rejected, afraid that I wasn't good enough. But now I know that a person who is truly worth it will like you for who you are." After closing the cafe that night, they sat on a bench by the sunflower field, gazing at the starry sky. Eleanor rested her head on Elias's shoulder and said softly, "You know what? When I was little, I used to wish on the stars that someone would see through my facade and choose me with unwavering conviction. I just realized now that that person has been by my side all along." Elias held her hand, his thumb gently caressing the ring on her ring finger. "I'll be with you to make every one of your future wishes come true." The evening breeze carried the fresh scent of sunflowers. The distant streetlights shone with a warm yellow light, casting their long shadows. Later, they built a small wooden cabin next to the sunflower field, filling it with their memories. The love letter Eleanor had pieced together, the movie tickets from their first date, the portrait Elias had drawn for her, and the couple sweaters her mother had later knitted for them. Whenever someone asked about their love story, Eleanor would smile and say, "Love isn't the stunning amazement of love at first sight. It's the willingness to understand each other with your heart after experiencing misunderstandings and tests." And Elias would always add, "Just like a sunflower, no matter how many storms it goes through, as long as it faces the sun, it will surely wait for the day it blooms." Their love, just like this sunflower field, transformed from initial misunderstanding and confusion to later honesty and companionship, finally blossoming into the warmest form over time.